Hey, it's the Profit Answer Man, Rocky Lalvani. If you're new to the podcast, check out my interview with Mike Michalowicz. It's episode number 2. If you want to hear about each chapter in the Profit First book, go back and listen to episodes 3 through 13. Episode 1 is the why and how. On the Profit Answer Man, we learn money mastery without all the complicated accounting mumbo-jumbo using a simple system. Your accountant is busy documenting your transactions and creating a rearview mirror of what happened. My guess is you don't even look at the reports they sent you. If you're like most business owners, you struggle with this, and it's not your fault. We aren't taught money in school, and accountants aren't taught how to be profitable. The Profit First system created by Mike Michalowicz works, and he certified me to help you implement the system in your business. Remember, the new equation is sales minus profit equals expenses. Let's face it, without cash flow, you can't pay your employees, buy needed materials, or pay your mortgage and support your family. I help you to do that and more, so you can focus on the parts of the business you love and receive the rewards for your labor and investment into your business. The stronger you are as a business owner, the more jobs you create, the better we are as a country. Small business owners are the backbone of America, and for that, you deserve to be well rewarded. Just remember, more revenue does not equal more profit. That's why we focus on the bottom line. We're going to chat about some of the basics of keeping you safe and secure from threats in your business. Small businesses are just as much a target as large businesses, and probably easier to scam because there's no controls in place. Email is one of the biggest ways this starts. And even if you do the right things, just opening a bad email can cause harm. There's so many threats, and too often we're too busy to even think about them. Today, we'll chat about some simple, easy ways you can protect yourself and your business. As an experienced business owner and leader, Karla Reffold has experience running businesses in cybersecurity, recruitment, and e-commerce with an international network in cybersecurity. Karla is passionate about values-led leadership and people development. She is the COO for Orpheus Cyber. Orpheus are a threat intelligence company with a SaaS platform that helps organizations manage their own risks and that of third parties with an easy-to-understand cyber risk score. Let's meet Karla. Welcome to the Profit Answer Man, Karla Reffold. It's great to have you join us today.
Hey, thanks for having me.
Excited for our conversation. Can you share a little bit about yourself and your business?
Yeah, well, right now I'm the general manager for Orpheus Cyber. So we're a cybersecurity business. I'm based out in the US and we're growing the business out here. Prior to that, I had 2 businesses in the cybersecurity industry, the main one being a recruitment business that I grew, sold, stayed with the people that bought us, and they're ultimately the reason I'm out here in the US. So that's a little bit me in the background.
So, successful business owner in the past, and now you are doing cybersecurity, which is what we're going to talk a little bit about today. But before we do that, let's talk about profit and the roller coaster of business. I know you've had a profitable business in the past, but as all of us, we hit little road bumps along the way, and it's always good to, I think, share that and some of the lessons that we learned. I know for you, one of those was maternity leave, and coming back to, I guess, wasn't a perfect situation.
No. So yeah, let's share a little bit about that. So this was my second maternity leave. Now, the first maternity leave, I'd been very hands-on, even while at home. And that hadn't worked very well for the other people in the business. They'd shared that they didn't feel like they were able to do the responsibilities that I'd left with them because I was always checking in. So this time we agreed I would check out a lot more and I would be less involved. So really big decisions did get run past me, but day to day, I tried very hard to let them do the jobs that they were trusted with. And I'd planned to take a little longer, but sort of 2, maybe 3 months in, one of my employees called me and said, "This really isn't working without you. You need to come back. There are lots of things going wrong." Some very highly paid employees who were really just not doing their job, certainly not delivering, but really not showing up. And they were costing the business a lot of money. So when I left, the business was in a very good position. We'd grown year on year and were profitable and all that good stuff. And at the point that I got this call and came back to see what really was going on, it was very clear that we were not as profitable as we have been, that a lot of those reserves had been used up, and we really needed to do something to turn that around. So that was a really scary place to be. And it's hard to then say, well, what could I have done differently?
Well, first off, I think it's awesome that the employee called you, because a lot of times they won't. That takes a certain amount of trust and a certain amount of, I don't know what the right word is, gumption, to be able to say, hey, I'm going to say something about the other top leaders in this company. What was it that caused that to happen?
I don't know if there was a trigger point, but I think it was very clear that the people that were managing the business in my absence had a very different style of management, which was not working for most of the team. The person that called me was quite trusted in general. So I feel like a lot of the team were probably saying to him, we're not happy. We're not happy with how we're being managed. And I think as well, he was mature enough to know that, if those people are out to long lunches every day and not really pulling their weight, that things are not gonna end well. It took me a little while. I didn't have childcare lined up. I'd planned to stay off for about another month. So it took me a couple of weeks to be able to sort everything out and to kind of get back. But yeah, you are right. Like, to have somebody trusted that was able to call me is a great place to be.
And the other thing is, we always talk about trust but verify. So we try to never turn over the bank accounts to anybody else. Always making sure and keeping track and watching the reserves and making sure that money is appropriately in the accounts and it's not disappearing faster than it should. Because I have seen this many times. It literally, within a couple of months, you can blow through a tremendous amount of cash if you are not careful, especially depending on the business. And it happens more often than not, I think.
I mean, that's such a great point, because this was a recruitment business. We were largely contingent permanent fees. So big fees that come in, but they're not guaranteed. You could do all the work, not get the money. So actually a quarter it's enough time to, if you've not had a good quarter, things really turn for you. Month by month, you can probably have bad months, but you really can't have a bad quarter. And also, it won't necessarily show up. I was looking at kind of what was happening, what pipelines were looking at, what was in the bank, but probably wasn't giving it my full attention. I had a child that didn't sleep for more than 2 hours at a time. So, like many people do. And that quarter is long enough that you can maybe not notice, but also long enough to make actually a really huge impact on where you are. And it can take then another quarter to get that pipeline and get that scale up if you've not been doing the business development activities that you need to be doing all the time. And that's very much where we were.
But you survived, right?
I did survive, yes. What I did was I came back. Quite honestly, I fired a lot of the top highly paid people who were not pulling their weight. That was not fun. But I think with one exception, I think they all realized they probably deserved it. Deserved is maybe a strong word. I think they saw it coming. And the main thing I did that really turned it around, our American business was in its early days, sort of a year or two in. I decided I would take a trip out there because the revenues we could generate from the US were higher and the turnaround time was quicker. It was quite clearly the quickest way we could get back on track. I had to leave. The second child was 6 months old at that time, had chicken pox, he was unwell, and I got a lot of slack from my family for taking that trip. They wanted me to cancel, but that trip turned things around. I was able to meet I think 20 or 30 different people. We won some work that was very lucrative, and was the thing that sort of by the end of that year meant we were back to profitability and back in a good place.
And I think sometimes we have to go on a sprint, which is what you did. It's not always the best, but when business goes down, you take the sprint, you figure it out, you get out and you start driving revenue again and do what you have to. And I think the reality is this happens more often than not with business owners. We go up and down, and if we're not taking care to watch both the incoming leads and nurturing incoming business, as well as making sure we're delivering, things do get out of whack. And so another thing we have to watch and be aware of, and then be willing to take the action that might not be popular by our family, for ourselves, or do the hard steps. And it sounds like you faced your family, you did the hard steps, and now we've got a lesson learned.
We do. I think one of those big lessons is facing yourself, right? The business was 4 or 5 years old at that point. We'd grown to a size where I was not really hands-on in sales, for sure. To take yourself back to those, almost like those early days, and to go and do that and be that hands-on again, that's a big deal, actually, like for a CEO to be able to do that and to be able to say, I'm just going to do what it takes. I think I had this realization, no one is coming to save me. I have to do this. There are no other options. And so I was able to kind of find that strength to go back and do all those tasks that maybe I thought I had left behind. But that's actually not an easy thing to do.
It is not. The beginning days of building a business aren't easy. And over time, we like to let go of the things we don't want to do, which I encourage people to do. But you've got to make sure we have the right people in place and that they are being appropriately measured and taken care of. Because as you saw, within a very short period of time, the wheels can come off the bus.
Yeah. And one of the problems was I had given them too much freedom, right? I'd given them too much freedom, not just on how they were generating revenue, but on what they were spending, because, they were highly paid, which was a problem, but there was also a high degree of expenses coming through, which, again, there can be a time lag on that for you to notice them. And that was maybe inappropriate as well, some of that spend.
And I've always talked about the fact employees don't mind spending other people's money. There's no constraint on it. It's not their money. They're not going to treat it like it's theirs. And if we don't have that profitability mindset, then it's like, oh, we're spending money so the business can make more money. But they don't understand what the actual numbers are and how hard it is when you spend money to recover it through sales, and profitable enough sales that will make it worthwhile.
One of the things I hate hearing the most when it comes to spend is, well, if we generate one sale off the back of this, then it will have paid for itself. You hear that all the time, right? Like, this event will be worth it because if we get one sale, the event's paid for itself. Paying for itself is not my goal. I need to 3, 5, 10x the money that I'm spending to generate sales. And I really hate hearing that, because, well, what if putting that money somewhere else generates more money? That's the thought process that often employees don't have, because you're right. Yeah, we'll spend the money. We want to go do the fun things. Actually, are we spending it in the right place, in the most profitable place, is not always part of that thought process.
Correct. And along those lines, I think when you say, oh, one sale will cover it, what they mean is the revenue from the one sale will cover it, but the revenue doesn't include all the costs of delivering that. And so it's really not covering it. You have to figure out, is the profitability of one sale going to cover this spend, which is a step most people don't do. So that number is much, much smaller. And again, every business is different, but you might have to sell $10,000 to have $1,000 of profit. So if you said, oh, the event was 10,000 and I got 10,000, not really, you lost 9,000 because you need 10 of those to make it back. And so that's kind of the math that I think people really need to understand and focus on.
Yeah. Yeah, I couldn't agree more. It's it's one of my little pet hates hearing that when it comes to how we spend money and how we go after customers.
That is a shame. So one of the things that we're going to talk about today is cybersecurity. And like right off the front is just these days, 'cause even I get them. People send me these fake invoices like, oh, you owe this bill. And if you don't have systems and processes in place and people don't know, it isn't hard that they just get paid. You're the expert here. So let's talk about what are the different things that small business owners have to look out for, and what are the most profitable ways to maintain cybersecurity without spending a fortune?
Okay, yeah. I mean, there's two big things in there. So, like, those invoices are a challenge. People do get them. You're right about the processes. You know, are the people paying the invoices set up? Where's your approval chain? They are reasonably easy, I think, to get around because, you know, if you've got an appropriate process for how you're approving things, then you shouldn't really be paying something by accident. But there's a couple of other risks with them. Sometimes clicking on that document, or sometimes even worse, there'll be a link, right? View your invoice here. We're going to be, you know, calling the bailiffs if you don't pay this in the next 10 days. You're going to click on the link to see what that invoice is. Those links themselves can be the problem, not necessarily the fact that you've got that email. So you've got to be really careful about what you're clicking on. There's lots of solutions out there to screen those links before they get to you or before you click on them. So be really careful about that, because even just clicking on it, even if you don't enter anything, potentially can be just as risky. So they're a big thing to watch out for. The other thing coming via email that is really common right now is emails that look like they're coming from one of your employees, where they say, hey, I've just changed my bank details. Can you please let payroll know to pay it here now instead of the old place? And they're fake. And those, you know, you pay the salary to the new email and the new bank details, and you've lost that employee's salary for the month. This affects even really big businesses. I'm thinking of one in particular where the CFO had their email compromised. That went to payroll, and for 3 months she didn't notice that the salary had not been going in. So that was, as you can imagine, CFO in a big business, that was a lot of money that they lost from that one. So proper processes again can help you there.
I challenge that CFO. If they're not paying attention to their finances, how can you run a big business?
How much money do you have? You don't need to check your own bank account for 3 months, right?
Well, you should at least notice that things are coming and going and having a process. It's not, you know, that you have to fuss over it, but you need to make sure the money came in, because you never know what's coming and going. I've actually set up a lot of my accounts to have alerts. So if things are happening, especially when a credit card is not present, or even to the bank when certain things are done from outside of me initiating them, I will get an email or I'll get a text message that says you did X. And I just watch them and it's never a big deal. But I'll always know if something pops up and it's fraudulent, then I would quickly know that something had gone wrong, because I was getting alerted. And now, again, it depends how many transactions you can do. If you're doing hundreds of transactions, that's not necessarily the best way. For me, it's fine. For somebody else, they have to figure out what works best for them. What is there a good way, or what should people do on the PCs in their company to prevent or to warn them about those links?
There's a couple of things. So first thing is training. You know, are you actually training your employees about these scams and what they need to be looking out for? Training isn't foolproof, right? You know, we can be tired. I'm tired sometimes and I click on the wrong thing just because I'm not thinking. So then look for some tools. And some of these are pretty inexpensive. You know, look for tools that are going to screen your emails. If you're using Office 365, they have some stuff built in. It's not necessarily the best on the market. There are other things, but that's a really good place to start, is looking at your email security. The other thing that's really very inexpensive and a good basic place to start is something called DMARC. So making sure that you have that enabled, that tells you when trusted people are sending you emails, and it will help your emails go through as well to organizations that have it enabled. It's pretty easy to do yourself if you've got a little bit of technical knowledge. And then there are companies that will help you do it for a few $100s a year. So and maybe you have an MSP provider that does that for you, but it's not an expensive thing, and that can make a really big difference. So there are kind of free to low cost solutions that can make a very big difference for you.
It's funny because my emails are run through the Gmail platform, even though they're, personal domains. And I can't tell you how often mine get clogged in Gmail spam. It's like, hello, I'm paying you. Why am I stuck in spam? And why don't my emails go through? So I'll have to look at that. That's always an issue, especially these days, is making sure that goes through. Because that's, again, it comes down to business and making sure your voice is being heard out there with your clients and being able to do that. What other types of cybersecurity issues do small businesses face?
They face all the same issues that big companies face. The thing that you hear most often is, no one cares about me. I'm too small to care about. And firstly, that's not true, because you probably spend less money on your cybersecurity. So you're an easy target, especially if that's been your attitude, that no one's going to come after you. You've probably done very little. So that's not true for you. It's also not true if your customers are big, because if your customers are big, a lot of the major attacks we've seen over the last couple of years have started with a smaller third party that nobody thought they would care about. And you're not the target. The customer is the target. And so actually your customers now are probably starting to ask you more about what security processes you have in place. And this could be the difference of winning business and not winning business, or keeping business and not keeping business. So that's something you really need to be aware of. And most of those companies get that if you're small, your risks are different and the things you need to put in place are different. But I would be surprised if there's anyone out there that isn't being asked those questions, or won't be very soon.
And that makes total sense. I know another big area tends to be wire fraud, and that's usually with most of that time. I've noticed that in the real estate space, where big deals are going down and you get a last minute email saying, here's the new wire instructions. And I think the people don't realize is when you send a wire, trying to get your money back is almost impossible.
Yeah, it is.
I don't know if you've experienced that or seen that.
Yeah, it's another really common thing. So realtors are targeted, lawyers often are targeted, and actually what might be happening there is the criminals are sitting in the emails of those realtors. Maybe even they've actually compromised their email. So it's a genuine email coming from them. That's actually a possibility. So it looks genuine. You can do all the checks, So I think if it's something like that, something unexpected, just make a phone call, like talk to somebody. Text messages are not as reliable as they were either. So kind of be mindful of, not just accepting a text message, but like have a conversation with somebody on the phone to make sure that is what you think it is. If it feels unusual, like you need to go verify.
Which also means that you need to have enough of a relationship with that person that you would know it was them because you've talked to them in the past. I mean, if you just called somebody up on a phone and not knowing for sure, it would just be as easy for them to spam it on that side.
Well, there is that. I would hope if it's your realtor, you've probably spoken to them or met them. And the point of all this stuff is whatever, and this is where spend and kind of profit comes into it. You could spend an unlimited amount of money on your cybersecurity and criminals will still find a way to get around that. There is no perfect solution. There are solutions which, if you do them, 99% of the stuff goes away. So you can do some very basic things like multi-factor authentication, like you said about the alerts for payments, entering codes. They're a pain to do, right? But they make a huge difference. Basic, free, will actually protect you against a huge amount of stuff. But if the criminals really want to get to you, they're gonna find a way.
They will. And again, the reality is criminals are lazy. If they weren't lazy, so just doing a little bit, I think, goes a long way to creating security. I've talked to business owners and they're like, yeah, we used to have trouble in our parking lot. So we put up a security camera and that solved the problem. We put on some lights. It solved the problem. Doing some basic things can probably solve a lot of the problems, and you don't have to spend a fortune. I think more often than not, though, what you're seeing is most small business owners are not even aware until they get burned. And so they're not even doing anything up front to make sure that they're safe. So let's just give them, if you're a small business owner, you're not doing a ton online, you're using maybe some of these bigger platforms, Google, Shopify, a lot of these third-party programs out there. And even Google always tells me, because when you go and you connect something that has access to Google, if you actually read what it says, hey, we have access to everything of yours at Google and we can delete it. And those third-party plugins and support programs might be, the vulnerability might not be with you, it might be with them too. So what are some things that the small business owner really needs to focus on that is easily actionable without spending a fortune?
Yeah, great question. So do the updates. When Google or Microsoft say, or Apple say, hey, there's an update, do the update because they're fixing problems, right? That's easy. That's free. Put in multi-factor authentication wherever it is available. Your bank will make you do it. Payroll will probably make you do it. Put it in absolutely everywhere. And just while we're on that, make sure your phone, it doesn't pop up with the notifications if the phone is locked, because that's something that's coming out now as well, where, if they get access to your phone physically, then, they can do a lot with that. So make sure the notifications only pop up when the phone is unlocked. Manage your passwords. There are password managers. There are sites that will generate random combinations. We should be past the point where people are using password and really basic things as their password, but you see it year in, year out. It's like the most popular password. So get some good hygiene going around that. Those things cost very little. They make a big difference. And then you can get into things like I mentioned around the DMARC, few $100s a year at most, if you're not technical, is going to save you a huge amount of problems. Maybe you could invest in making sure you know what you have. One of the problems that we see is there's rogue IT out there. Have you disposed of things properly? Have you shut things down when you're no longer using them? There's a couple of other things that get a little bit more complicated and a bit more technical, but you start doing these things and actually you're really far ahead of what most businesses are doing.
So along those lines, couple things. We all get lazy. Owners are giving out their personal passwords to employees or to their VAs to access their accounts. So having a system in place that should somebody leave, you have the ability to immediately take it back and it's not your particular password. In other words, you can turn accounts on and off. You have the ability to change passwords across the system very easily. Like I know with LastPass, I can share a password with somebody, but they can't see it technically. But I think there's even ways to break that where they can see it. So having those types of systems where you're not giving access to truly crucial stuff to employees, and then having the ability to turn on and off employee accounts easily in case there's a problem. It is not hard for disgruntled employees who are leaving, and especially these days with all the quiet quitting and everything else going on, protecting your email systems and being able to see what they're doing and have control over that so that they're not sending out emails in your company name. That might be a problem. And then locking them out of all the software when they leave and the third-party software as well. Making sure to do that and remove their access. Because I think too often than not, we forget to remove access to all the different things from them.
That's exactly it, right? Like in larger companies, there's some awesome software out there that will monitor employees' activity. So it will look for hints that an employee is doing something that they shouldn't. You know, someone's preparing to leave and they're downloading the database and that looks odd. That is probably too expensive and too advanced for the smaller businesses. But just making sure you've shut off their access when they leave, everyone can do that. And that, how often does that not happen where we forget and then you've got somebody that's actually still got access to your systems and they probably haven't done anything with it, but that access is out there. It means that if somebody compromises those credentials in a leak from a different company, those passwords get reused. They're just an entry point that you don't need. So get rid of stuff you don't need.
And that's the most important thing. Any closing thoughts?
I think just, you know, you don't have to spend a fortune on this stuff to be more secure, and it will ultimately make you more profitable. You're not putting money at risk, and potentially you're going to win customers off the back of it. If not now, I think that's coming.
And I think one of the biggest issues we run into is a lot of employees are not technically savvy. So making sure for those employees, you've got systems in place that prevent them from following bad links or doing anything that might compromise your systems or leak out bad information. And part of that is training. And part of that is just having protections and firewalls in place to make sure it doesn't happen. If people would like to learn more about you and your company and services, what's the best way for them to do that?
So I'm on LinkedIn more often than I should be. Karla Reffold. I think there's only one person with the name spelt my way, so I should be quite easy to find. And then the company's Orpheus Cyber. So you stick that in Google and you'll find our website.
And we'll put that in the show links. Thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you.
I encourage you to do some of the basics. Secure your passwords and accounting system access. Check in and verify what's going on financially. Update your systems and software to prevent vulnerabilities. Shred documents that have confidential information. And then watch out for ex-employees or look out for employees' roommates who might have access to your information. You are a target whether you want to be or not, so protect yourself with some basics just to keep everything safe.
If you'd like for us to be a part of your profitability journey, we have different programs available ranging from do-it-yourself to one-on-one coaching. Our course, The Profit Blueprint, teaches you everything you need to know to transform your profitability. There are 3 different tiers ranging from DIY to done with you so that businesses of all sizes can get the support that's best. Join the waitlist in the show notes to get more information and be a part of the next cohort. If you want a done-for-you service, you can hire us as your Chief Profitability Officers. We only work with a handful of clients, so they all get our full attention. We work with business owners who have or are growing to $500,000 to $10 million in revenue. You can use the scheduling link in the show notes to get on our calendar for a good fit conversation to see if we're the right people to support you.
This episode of the Profit Answer Man podcast is brought to you by SMBpodcastnetwork.com. The network is a collection of podcasts and shows from around the internet which focus on bringing you interviews with amazing guests who share actionable advice, ideas, and information for small and medium-sized business owners and entrepreneurs. Visit www.smbpodcastnetwork.com to find more great shows and easily subscribe to be notified of new episodes. It's a great way to discover quality content. If you've discovered us via the network, then I hope you enjoy today's show and will consider subscribing directly so you never miss our episodes. To check out my other podcast, Richer Soul, where we talk about life beyond money and how to live that ultimate life. and become a better leader in your company. As we close out, let's repeat the mantra. Revenue is vanity, profit is sanity, and cash is king. Have an abundant and profitable week.